Where do you see the Guild going from here? What other challenges do you see facing um, architecture, and whether it be learning to build smarter, more sustainable? I mean, even just common issues of mold and mildew, and having a healthy home. Um, how do you see the Guild um, entering into that, and coming up with solutions for that?
Well, I got a three-part answer to that. Let me go
Okay.
back to right after Katrina.
Okay.
One of the things that the Guild did immediately after Katrina is that literally in that next week, well, on that Saturday after the hurricane, Andres and I sat down and laid out, amongst other things, we laid out what were the foundation principles of what has since become known as Katrina cottages. Now, our idea was if we could have some little tiny cottage that might not cost more than a pickup truck, that somebody could get and put on a corner of their land to gain a foothold on the land so they wouldn't lose it, because, hey, if your house is gone, people said, I'm a proud slab owner in Pass Christian or whatever. I mean, that was kind of the gallows humor. But if your house is gone, but you still have to be making the mortgage payments, and the insurance companies aren't acting quickly, many people down there lost their houses simply because how are you going to keep making mortgage payments when your job is gone because the business got blown out? And so it was a tough thing. And so we were saying if we could let them get a foothold again on their land, to where they can live there in very tight quarters, and then rebuild the big house over time, or the bigger house. And so some of these things were, the smallest one is one that we've designed that was 170 square feet. It was one that was at the Builder Show at the next spring that was 300 feet. That a lot of people saw, but there's been quite a number. There were Guild members that were designing Katrina cottages within less than 2 weeks after the storm. Completely pro bono, all of the work was. And so there's been just this tremendous outpouring of effort in that regard from the Guild, and they've really kind of fostered the movement since then in many different ways. The Guild Foundation hosts the KatrinaCottages.com website, for example, and so forth. Now, there were a lot of lessons that came out of that we have since applied to something we call Project Smart Dwelling. Project Smart Dwelling is an idea about how we take basically what the American house has become. Now, this was something that we're doing in response to the meltdown. And, we've had this tremendously bloated house where we have a house twice as big as at the end of World War II, and the family's half the size. And yet, with half as many people in houses twice as big, we have so much stuff that won't fit that we've made the mini storage industry a $17 billion a year business. That's bigger than the movie industry. And so we're saying, wait, let's see if we can take the American house and shrink it to basically half the size that it had been, but still have it work for the same customers, because it can't just be smaller where somebody says I can't do that, but if it's smaller and smarter where somebody says I could live there, then it becomes something that actually a lot of people will be getting financing for that they aren't getting financing for today on the 2,400 foot houses or whatever size it is. And so we had to do a lot of things, to be smaller and smarter. The ultimate test of that was the Katrina cottages. One idea that we came up with there was the idea of no wasted interior walls. By that I mean, instead of having sheetrock on the inside walls, instead what we did is we said, okay, we're going to take boarding, like a tongue and groove board, and put it on one side of the wall, leave the other side open, and then have that be shelves. So the total space inside the house, now the outside walls are insulated, of course, but the entire space inside is actually all usable for storage. And so in doing so, a house can live a whole lot larger than what it really is. And so what we realized more recently, though, especially after the Chinese sheetrock debacle that's still ongoing for a lot of people that are victims of that, we're saying, why do we need sheetrock? Isn't there some way that we can actually come up with a new way of building houses so that essentially there are no cavities? It's a cavity-free house. that on the inside everything is all open to air, so you have air flowing around, and
Less chance for mold and mildew to grow
yeah,
anyway.
absolutely, because as long as you have free flow of air, that's not normally where that occurs, and then also sheetrock is the quickest thing to go to mush. One little leak and it's ruined. If you get a leak on a board, you just kind of dry it off and you go on.
Repaint maybe.
And repaint maybe, and that's about the extent of it. So anyhow, there's these several things together: the Katrina cottages, and then the smart dwellings, and then this whole idea that's come out of that of building with no cavities, where you're actually using every cubic inch of space basically in a house. It's some pretty cool stuff. We're really excited to see where that goes. So.
Okay, the final thing I'd like to ask Steve is, what is the biggest challenge facing the built environment today, and what stresses is this challenge causing on both professionals and the consumer, and what can we do about it as a group?
Well, we actually have about 3 different major stresses that are happening all at once. It's a grand convergence, or a dire convergence, really. We have all of the issues having to do with sustainability and climate change. We have what will be, I'm quite certain, an escalating energy cost issue, because let's look at it this way. There are 2.5 billion people right now in China and in India that are in the process of moving from a very low impact agrarian setting to basically moving to the city. I mean, and they want to be like us. They're saying, we've seen the prosperous American middle class lifestyle. We want that. We don't want to be stuck out on the rice paddies anymore. And so the problem with that, of course, is when you move to the city, your impact is much higher. If they do 2.5 times as well as we do, because in the U.S. with 300 million people, there's over 300 million cars. So we have more than 1 car per person. If they do 2.5 times as well as that, in a few years there's going to be 1 billion cars on the road in just those 2 countries, and that's not even counting other populous places like Brazil. And so what's going to happen is that there's no shadow of a doubt where the price of gas is going. The only question is, how high will it go? But we know it's going to be a whole lot higher. So that's all happening. At the same time is the meltdown. There's people in especially in the construction industries and everything associated with that. So, for example, the architectural profession has been just completely decimated by the meltdown. And so all 3 of those things together are really going to create a complete paradigm shift, where what we're going to be doing in the future will not really resemble what we have done in the past. Now, it's not completely clear what that's going to be, but it's going to have to be a far more sustainable future. Otherwise, we're going to have some really dramatic situations that we don't want to go there. So what we're about, everything that we're doing with the Guild at this point, is to try to say, how can we contribute in some way? Now, nobody has the whole answer. We don't pretend to have the whole answer, but we do have a lot of things to contribute having to do with the built environment, both on the side of architecture and the side of actually putting the towns together. And we feel like there's a lot that we can contribute in that regard to a more sustainable future. But really, it's the combined 3 of those things that are really going to make things interesting over the next few years.
Very good. We look forward to seeing it.
Thanks.